Hello kings and queens, and welcome back to my YouTube channel, The Art of Life and Love. My name's Joanna. This is an extension of my creative writing and wellness blog, also called The Art of Life and Love. I'll put the links to it down below. This week I will be talking to you guys about grief, what the 5 stages of grief are, how I personally process grief, and how I've come to understand that how I was processing grief was actually unhealthy, and how you can spot the signs of that as well. First of all, I would like to just say I am sorry that I missed putting out a video last week. I have been going through it. That's a massive understatement, but yeah, I've been going through it. So as you can see, I'm in a brand new place again, or kind of I've returned home. So the home that I've mentioned in some of my previous videos, I'll put them up here. I've returned. I had no choice. The woman that I was living with came into my room one day completely out the blue, was like, you have to go. I was like, why? She's like, it's not working out. And then she didn't speak to me. And then 2 days later she texted me asking me if I was packing up ready to go. So I didn't even have like a week's notice. I went through a lot of anxiety. I was having like panic attacks daily, like at least 2 really bad ones every day. But yeah, so it's been a very, very tough period for me. You guys know from my Let's Talk About Suicide video what I've been through this year. So in addition to that, some more stuff has happened, and I just decided to take a break. You know, sometimes you have to put yourself first, you have to think about your own health, and that's why I didn't have the energy or the emotional resilience to make a video last week, but that is fine because I'm making one now. We are all allowed to take breaks, and we don't have to apologise for putting our needs first. So, grief. What is grief? Basically, grief is what happens to you when you lose something or someone. It is a process of emotions that you go through. It's how you handle loss. It's how you handle bereavement. And that could be for anything. You could lose a competition and you're grieving because of that loss. You could lose a loved one, whether physically they die or whether you simply have a breakup. But the series of emotions that you go through and how you handle yourself after those losses is what we term grief. Now, there are unhealthy ways to process grief, and there are healthy ways to process grief. And what I've come to realize this year is that how I've been processing grief has been extremely unhealthy. Now, this probably happens to all of us. You know, we all have childhood wounds, we all have coping mechanisms, we all have ways that we process things. And if we don't take the time to sit with ourselves and go, you know, is this a healthy way of working things out? Then you just won't know. You'll continue on in this unhealthy cycle. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to explain to you guys the 5 stages of grief, and then I'm going to talk to you about how I used to process grief and how I now process grief, and hopefully it's a much more healthy way of processing. And if you guys can use it in your daily lives or when you're going through the grieving process, maybe it'll help you to let go of your emotions in a much more healthy way. So there are many different diagrams and theses for what the stages of grief are, but we all know about the main one, the 5 stages of grief. So you've got denial, you've got anger, you've got bargaining, you've got depression, and then finally you have acceptance. Now, the main thing to mention is that these stages of grief do not always happen in a linear process. You may start out with depression and move into anger. You may start out accepting and then suddenly you're in denial. It's not linear. There are many ways that you can process these things. And also, everyone is different. So everyone will have had different experiences in their lives. Everyone will have different coping mechanisms. Everyone will have different ways that they themselves process emotion. So not everyone is going to follow the linear process of the 5 stages of grief. But the general rule is that once you've gone through these stages of grief and you've finally reached acceptance, that is when you've reached the healthy level. That is when you have come to terms with your loss. And that is the main reason for having a healthy process of grief. It's so that you come to terms with your loss and you don't let it rule or dictate how you cope with things for the rest of your life. Now, I personally feel like I've gone through the 5 stages of grief at least 15 times this year, and I feel like it's ongoing. And that's okay. As well as it not being a linear process, it's also not a timed process. You don't have to grieve to anyone else's standards. You don't have to grieve by anyone else's timestamps. So if other people are saying to you, oh, why haven't you gotten over that yet? That was ages ago. Don't listen to them. You have your own process, as long as you know that you're processing in a healthy way, and that, you know, the longer it drags on, it's not a detriment to you in your personal life, your work life, your mental health, etc., then that is okay. That's fine. Don't listen to the noise. That's going to be my new phrase. Don't listen to the noise. So in terms of the way I process grief, or the way I used to process this grief, until I realized that what I was doing was quite not normal, but I would kind of be like to myself, am I supposed to, is this the right way? Like, I don't feel like I'm grieving, you know, because I've experienced 2 losses this year in terms of loved ones. Like, my grandfather passed away in March and my beloved dog passed away in April. So it was 2 bereavements in a very short period of time. And when it came to my dog, bearing in mind, I've had him in my life for 15 years. He was my baby, he was my child. He was a complete little shit, but I loved him to the ends of the earth, and I still miss him every day. I got him put down, and within 2 days, I was over it. I remember I cried the day, and I cried the next day, and the next day, nothing. I was back to making jokes, back to dealing with it in a very, very unhealthy way. And what I realized I was doing is I was repressing those emotions subconsciously, because no one will choose to do that. No one will choose to not grieve someone that they've loved and lost. But I pushed it down. I spent 2 days with tears in my eyes, and then I got over it. And it wasn't until months later, when I was completing my letting go ritual, and I decided to put my dog's name, Toby, down on one of those pieces of paper and burn it and let go and release. It was only when I did that ritual, that process, that I realized there was a lot of grief left unprocessed around that whole situation. With my granddad as well, I didn't cry. When I got told that my granddad had passed away, I didn't cry at all. So I didn't cry at all for my granddad. I only cried for a couple of days for my dog. And then I've gone through a heavy series of bereavements and losses in the past 6 to 7 months. And that has led me to the conclusion that the way that I was dealing with grief was very detrimental to my mental health. And it wasn't until I came up with my letting go ritual, which I will put a link to up here, and it wasn't until I started to actually properly process my emotions, that I was able to let go, that I was able to process that bereavement and let go of it. I also realized that I hadn't been processing what was happening to me this year until I had those series of panic attacks. Because I rang up one of my besties, I rang up my good friend Linda. If you're watching this, I love and appreciate you so much. I don't know what I don't know what I would have done without you. I love you so much. You are family to me. So hi, shout out. But I was having a panic attack, and I was on the phone to my friend Linda, and she was just like to me, let it out, it's about time, you know? And it wasn't until she said that to me that I'd realized that this panic attack that I was having was to do with the situation. You know, it was to do with the uncertainty, the unfair treatment from a relative, kind of being tossed aside, betrayed, abandoned, that sort of stuff. It was to do with that. That's what triggered the attacks. But when I was having them, they were intense. They were maybe lasting over 40 minutes. They were really intense. I was shaking, all of that. I'll talk about it in a different video. But it wasn't until she said, you know, it's fine, it's about time you let this all out, that I realized I had been holding in all of my grief. I had not processed it. I had not touched it with a 10-foot pole. I had pushed it down. I had tried to be strong because of my situation. And it wasn't until, you know, the straw that broke the camel's back that it all came flooding out of me. And I realized that is such an unhealthy way to go about your day, with all this pent up emotion, all this pent up sorrow and grief that you're not processing, that you're not releasing. So that's really why I wanted to make this video, because I want to show you that, you know, I don't have it all figured out, but the realizations that I'm making, I want to share with you guys, because we do need to process grief properly. So the first way that you can process grief healthily is to actually feel it. You do not have to be scared of these emotions. They are all perfectly normal, perfectly natural. And it is normal to be scared of pain, and that's what grief is. It's feeling pain, it's processing that pain. But if you don't feel it, then you'll end up doing what I did and repressing it. And as we know, when you repress it, there's only so much that you can push stuff down. You know, you've only got so much space inside you. So when that space runs out, it will come spilling out, just like it did with my panic attacks. And I would not want anyone to go through what I went through last week. I wouldn't even wish that on someone, you know, my worst enemy. It was horrible, and it was a massive realization for me. So that's my number one thing. You need to allow yourself to feel that grief. Do not shy away from it. Do not repress it. Do not push it down. The second thing you can do is to talk about your grief. It is okay, it is normal to not want to talk to anyone. It is normal to want to retreat, to hide, to push people away. You know, it may even be, some of you people pleasers out there may not want to burden others with your grief. But you need to get it out. You need to talk to someone, even if you open up your camera like I'm doing and just talk to your video. You know, as long as you're expressing it in a verbal form so that it's actually being released from your body, from your spirit, it's not just being pent up in your heart, then that's a really healthy way to process it, by talking to those that you love, potentially even people who are going through what you're going through. That's why they have support groups for parents who've lost their children, because it's not something that everyone has experienced on this earth, but someone who has experienced it will know exactly how you feel. And that's the kind of thing that you need to do. You need to find yourself a support group, or you need to find yourself a confidant or a loved one or someone who's going through what you're going through, to talk to them about it and release those emotions verbally. The third thing, again, I'm going to mention my letting go ritual, which I will put a link to down below. It's literally something that I came up with this year. Like, it's not massively spiritual. You don't need to say any incantations or spells or anything like that. What it is I'm utilizing psychology. I'm utilizing visualization. And it's something that I go on quite a bit about in my videos, because I am a very visual person. So for me, it's not enough to, you know, meditate, sit there and be like, okay, I'm letting this go, unless I'm seeing something in my mind's eye. That's why when I do meditations, I usually do guided meditations, meditations that are walking me through. I don't know if you guys can hear the rain, but it's just started to absolutely pour down outside, and I'm filming this right by my window. It's really aesthetically pleasing. Where was I? There goes my focus. Right, peace out. No, I'm kidding. The letting go ritual, yes, visualization, massively visual person. That's why for me, you know, writing something down, they do say that words are powerful, especially when you write them down. That's why, you know, journaling first thing in the morning is a really good thing, stuff like that. So when you're writing down what you want to process or let go, when you're physically burning it, watching it dissipate in front of your eyes, that for me is really, really helpful. So if you find that sort of thing helpful and you want to see more about my letting go ritual, I'll put a link to it down below. My fourth thing, cry. It may seem, oh wow, it's really shutting it down. Cry your eyes out, honey. Because I don't know, whenever you guys have like a really, really big cry, and I mean like from the soul, kind of like like those kind of soul deep cries. But yeah, if you've ever had those like deep sobs, the ones where you are just like bawling your absolute eyes out, then you'll know that you not only feel lighter afterwards, but you feel like you've actually released something. So when you cry, like, I think I saw something the other day, you know, don't try and fact check me on this or anything, but the chemical composition of your tears is different depending on why you're crying. So they showed that tears that came from, you know, when you're cutting onions had a different chemical composition to when you're crying over grief, when you're crying over this, that, the other. So it actually shows like that you have a physical different reaction chemically when you cry about different things. So I think that's why when you cry and you're like really, really, really crying, like you're really releasing, you're really feeling it feeling those emotions, feeling that pain, it is a way to release. And so I cry over everything. I cry over books, I cry over movies, I cry over TV shows, I cry when I'm happy, I cry when I'm sad. I cry just sometimes for no reason. And I can't explain it. I'll be talking and like that my eyes will start welling up, and I'll just be like, sorry, I don't know what's going on. It must be my hormones. Bloody hormones. Cry your eyes out, honey. You need to release that shit. Fifth thing, remind yourself that you are not anybody else. The way that you process grief, the way that you process emotions, the way that you feel things is unique. You are not like anyone else. You are not like me. You are not like your mum. You're not like your brother. You're not like your best friend. You will have your own unique sets or ways of processing things. Now, what you need to do is, as well as understanding that, you also need to take into consideration whether or not your style of processing is healthy. So we need to put in some self-reflection there, like I have done this year. Is the way that I process grief healthy? Am I holding it in? Am I releasing it? Am I talking to anyone, or am I hiding away? Am I letting myself dwell in the depression stage instead of moving on to acceptance? And then lastly, remind yourself that time is a healer. You are not going to lose someone today, do my letting go ritual tomorrow, and be okay by the next day. Because that's an unhealthy way of seeing things. So you need to understand that it's a process. Healing is a journey. It may take you time. You should not set yourself by anyone else's standards. You do you, honey. You do you. And when you do you, you'll find that you will thrive. You will thrive the most when you're doing things the exact way that you need to do things. So be kind to yourself. Be gentle. Do not be harsh. Do not be strict. Do not give yourself deadlines like, I need to get over my bereavement by 2 weeks Sunday, otherwise I'm a complete failure. None of that. You are amazing. You are doing the best that you can with what you have. I'm so proud of you. Thank you for watching this. I really hope it helps. I hope that you can go away and that you can begin to kind of self-reflect on how you yourself process emotions and how you process grief, and hopefully work towards a more healthy way of processing grief and letting go. It will get better. Better things are coming. You will be fine. Thanks for watching. If you like what you saw today, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button, as well as the bell icon to get notifications of when my videos are released. If you could go ahead and give me that thumbs up, that would also be amazing. Thank you very much, everyone. I hope you have an amazing mental health week. Bye.